So welcome to our study of genetics, which is the scientific study of how of inheritance, how characteristics are passed from parents to offspring. So just to show you about how parents and children look similar, I wonder if you can guess which one is this man's son? A, B, C, or D? Even if you don't know them, most people guess correctly that A is his son. And for the second one, we have a father here. Which one is his son? All of these people are called David something, and this one here is David Beckham, and this is Mr. Beckham, his father. Maybe you can see the cleft chin, which has been passed from father to child. And the last one we'll look at is the actor Tom Hanks, and his son looks very like him, and this is his son here, Colin. So from this we can see that parents and their children do in fact look similar, something we're very familiar with. But that isn't always the case. Sometimes children can be quite different from their parents, as shown in this slide here. And you may recognize that this is a condition known as albinism, where the individual does not produce pigment, so they have white hair and very pale skin. So the big question that we're going to be looking at in this unit is, why are offspring produced from two parents both similar to and different from their parents? And we're going to think about this question by looking at inheritance in these little creatures here. These are called rebobs, and they're very useful for genetic experiments because they breed quickly. They have clearly observable traits or characteristics such as curly tail or red snout, a straight antenna. This one has blue legs, and they also have a very well understood genetics. This little creature has got 8 pairs of chromosomes in the diploid cell. So I want to start by introducing the parents. So here we have a dad called Robert and a mother called Samantha. And male and female look quite similar, but you can tell them apart because of this, this is on Samantha, which is like a feeding tube, which she uses to feed her young. And while Robert and Samantha look very similar, there's one key difference between them, which is that Robert has a green snout, Samantha has a red snout. But look at the children they have. Here are their kids, and all their kids have green snouts. There are no red snouts amongst all the offspring that they produce. But from that first generation we can produce a second generation, and here are Robert and Samantha's grandchildren, produced when their children breed together. And here are some of them. And what we notice is that while most of them have green snouts, this red snout characteristic, red snout trait, has reappeared. It seemed to disappear in the first generation, but in this second generation it has reappeared. So some of them, a minority, have red snouts. So how can we explain these results? Well, these experiments weren't done by me. They were done by a professor about 200 years ago called Grigor Mendala, and here's his picture here. And in order to explain these results, he had the following conclusions. First one is that inheritance of characteristics is caused from something which is passed from parents to offspring. Now, he didn't know what these were, but we now call these things genes, which are found on chromosomes, of course, as we know. So the trait that Professor Mendala studied in his first experiment is controlled by one gene, which occurs in two forms. And these alternative forms of the same gene are called alleles. Very important word in genetics. So we can say that there are two alleles of the gene for snout colour. One gives a snout with the colour red, and the other produces a snout with the colour green. And very importantly, some alleles are dominant and others are recessive. So what that means is that an organism with the dominant allele for a trait will always have that trait, but an organism with the recessive allele for a trait will only have that trait, only have that characteristic, if there is no dominant allele present. Remember that there will be each organism, each individual will have two alleles for the same gene, one which comes from its mother, one which comes from its father. So, can we make sense of these words to explain Professor Mendela's results? Well, here's how we can do that. The gene for snout colour in this creature happens to be found on chromosome 2, and Dad, Robert, has two dominant alleles, and we'll give these the symbol, big G and big G. Normally we use big G, capital letters for dominant and small letters for recessive alleles. But Mum, Samantha, has two recessive alleles, small g, small g. So what that means is that their children will all be big G, small g. Big G from Dad and small g from their mother. And that means that they're what they look like, physical characteristics, they will all have green snouts because of this dominant gene. But when sex cells are formed in these creatures, these alleles separate. So some of the sex cells will have the big G allele, the dominant allele, and some will have the recessive allele. And when they combine, we can get the following combinations. When they combine in their grandchildren, small g could combine with a small g, a big G with a small g, or a big G with a big G. All of these combinations in the grandchildren are possible. And of course what that means is that an individual with two recessive genes will have a red snout, with one dominant and one recessive, or with two dominants, they will have a green snout. So this explains why some of the grandchildren, second generation, had red snouts, but some others, most, had green snouts. So if you're asked to write down what you think are the most important ideas from this lesson, I hope you would write something about traits being controlled by genes, and genes coming in alternative forms which are called alleles. And alleles can be dominant or recessive. These were some of the most important ideas from what's gone before.